Hi, I am your host, Scott Rendall, and welcome to Your Certain Way. This podcast is devoted to showcasing amazing and interesting people who have pursued their own passions in life, love, and work. In so doing, they have found great joy and happiness in their journeys. Through these interviews, I hope to inspire you to follow your own dreams and passion, because you deserve to choose your own certain way. Hi, I'm Scott, and I'm here with Dr. Suzanne Hetts. And she's
Hello, Scott.
Hi, she's an animal behavioralist. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Well, as you said, I'm an animal behaviorist, and what that means is that I have a PhD in animal behavior from Colorado State University, and I'm certified by the Animal Behavior Society as an applied animal behaviorist. My husband and I, Dr. Dan Estep, have worked with pets and with people and behavior problems for probably over 30 years now.
Oh, wow. Great. And then why did you choose this career field? Are you a big pet owner, I'm assuming? Or a big pet fan?
Yeah, I think the most pets I've had at any one time, I had 5 dogs and 3 cats at one time in my younger years, but I'm not that crazy anymore. And so we're down to just one Irish setter, our diva dog. But years ago, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and back when I was graduating from high school and going to college, women just did not become veterinarians. But that, of course, has changed. But I took a rather circuitous route through wildlife.
Do you consider yourself more of a pet trainer or a human trainer?
You know, it's really both, because obviously the people are the ones who have to implement our recommendations, but we also have to show them what those recommendations are. So I would say it's really both.
Okay. All right, so can any pet learn these basic rules, or I should say any pet or human learn these basic rules we're about to go over, or is this something like there's just some pets that won't get it, or some humans?
No. Pets, it's really surprising that most of our clients say, well, I think my dog is really smart, or I think my cat is really smart. And dogs and cats really are intelligent, maybe just not with the same sorts of criteria that we think of as people being intelligent. So with the right training methods and the right approach, dogs and cats can learn to do a whole variety of things and be good family members and good members of the community.
Okay. In a home setting, what do you see as like the primary issue with pets?
We see mostly a lot of aggression cases. Veterinarians who refer cases to us is that sometimes for what they consider to be the more straightforward or simpler problems, they'll either try to help people with them themselves, or they might refer them to a trainer. So in addition to aggression, some of the common problems that we see that I know other people are getting referrals about are destructive behavior, fighting among family pets, and certainly the one that you deal with, the house soiling.
Yes, that's a big issue. Our clients call often about that.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about pet urine? What is a pet thinking? Is it like one size fits all when it comes to pet urine, and so I guess to a lesser degree feces, but mostly we see a lot of pet urine. The dog decides to go over in the corner and use it for a bathroom when it knows that when the owners are home, it can easily go outside. What's going on in their head?
Well, there's a lot of different things, and that's really an insightful observation in that it's not a one-size-fits-all. There can be different reasons why pets decide to eliminate in the house. And as we were talking about earlier before we did the call, anytime a pet's elimination habits change, that's a clear sign to get the animal in for a thorough medical evaluation, including a urinalysis or whatever diagnostic tests the vet thinks is appropriate. Because I can't tell you how many cases we've seen or people want us to see, and we tell them to go back to their veterinarian, and sure enough, the veterinarian unearths some sort of medical problem. It doesn't have to be just like a urinary tract infection or something. It can be something more systemic, like diabetes or any other kind of medical issue can cause a pet to change where and when he likes to eliminate. So owners should never assume that it's a behavior problem until the pet's been thoroughly examined and evaluated by their veterinarian.
Okay, let's assume that it is definitely something going on in their head that they, what are the causes for this? Let's rule out the whole medical issue.
Okay.
I guess pet behaviorist or behavior is definitely a medical issue, is it not?
Well, behavior isn't really a medical issue. If there isn't a something wrong medically that's causing the pet to change his elimination habits, then there can be behavior reasons that really don't have anything to do with medical reasons. And some of those are, we might see animals who really haven't been fully house trained. And we can get into that a little bit more here in a bit if you want to. We can see pets who have developed surface and location preferences for the inside as compared to the outside. And again, that can happen for lots of different reasons. We can also see pets who don't like to go outside to eliminate, if you're talking about dogs. For example, today here in Denver, it's cloudy, it's misty, it's rainy, and some of the little guys just don't want to go out there and get their bellies wet. You know, it's uncomfortable. I don't blame them. So it's, you know, if I don't have to use a porta potty, I'd rather use a heated bathroom. Sure. So some of those guys can say, well, if I can sneak off to the room where nobody is going to find me, then I'm just going to stay inside and relieve myself rather than braving this inclement weather. So that can be an example of surface and location preferences that animals develop. Sometimes both dogs and cats will urinate inside because they're marking territory. And you had asked earlier about feces. There are some species of animals that do mark with feces, but we don't have any good evidence that either dogs or cats do that. So if you're finding poop in the house, then it's not a marking behavior. There's another reason for that.
Okay. What about differences with male and female of the species? Do females, they don't mark, the males mark, right? Or is that a fallacy?
Well, not exactly a fallacy. Certainly males are mark much more commonly than females do, but females can mark, especially females who are not yet spayed. But it's much less common for females to mark than for males.
Okay. So we're looking at medicals ruled out. We're looking at now there's some behavioral reason. So a male might mark for territory, sometimes a female, but what other reasons might they mark, or might they go in the house besides those two?
Well, the first thing is to look at the pattern of when the elimination is occurring so that a pet owner can better figure that out. For example, if the elimination is occurring only when the pet's left alone, then that could be a separation anxiety related issue, as you talked about. And there the problem really isn't the elimination, that's just the symptom. Really the problem is the dog's fear and anxiety when he's left alone. So that's really what needs to be addressed in order for the elimination to decrease. With cats, we we seldom see separation anxiety in cats, but we often see litter boxes that don't meet the cat's behavioral needs. Perhaps the litter is of the wrong type, the particles are too big, maybe they're not cleaning it often enough, maybe it's located in an inconvenient location that to the owner is out of the way but isn't very convenient for the cat. So we see location problems with cats, and we see sometimes the litter is too deep, or people will get the litters that are scented, and the cats don't really like those strong scents. So for cats, it's real important to keep the litter box odor neutral, to not make the litter too deep. Many cats do not like covers on their boxes, and also to make sure that you have as many boxes as you have cats, and the boxes are located in separate areas so that each cat kind of has his own toileting area.
Okay, so a cat wouldn't necessarily, if you have 3 cats, you don't just get one cat box, you get 3.
Correct. And that's an observation that you can easily make, you know, when you're out helping people. If there aren't enough boxes for the number of cats in the family, then you can certainly suggest that. and not to just line them up side by side, because that really is one toileting area from the cat's perspective. So you want the boxes to be located in separate areas, so there's some social distancing there.
Okay, so it's pretty complex. It's not just as simple as, hey, there's your bathroom, cat, get over there and use it.
Exactly. You know, you got to figure out what they like and what they don't like, because if the carpet in the dining room is softer and more private and gets them away from the other cats, then they'll choose that as compared to, say, a litter box where another cat might be ambushing them, or it's next to the furnace and they got scared by the furnace, or the owner hasn't cleaned it out in 3 days. So they make choices based on what they like.
Very interesting. Hadn't considered that. I thought a litter box is a litter box. I don't have cats, so. But when we did have cats, we only had one at a time, so it wasn't an issue. But I can kind of see that there would be an issue with more cats getting involved with the picture here.
Definitely. So, and you know, some cats are much more tolerant of litter box, you know, uncleanliness and characteristics that they may not really like. Some cats will just tolerate it a lot more than other cats who can be real persnickety about that stuff.
And then you put a dog into the mix. You know, they say cats and dogs fight like cats and dogs. I've seen some cats and dogs get along pretty well.
Absolutely.
But even then, if the dog is harassing or is perhaps marking around that territory, do they do that too?
You know, it's uncommon for a dog to mark because of the presence of a cat. You see that a lot when there are multiple cats, like you talked about. But sometimes one of the problems will be, as you alluded to, the dog might catch the cat coming out of the litter box and startle him. That's a problem. And sometimes owners will put the litter box in a place that makes it hard for the dog, say, to get in there and eat the poop. But then it's also not real convenient for the cat to get to, and that can cause issues.
Okay. Is there like a general rule, or like, do they prefer dark areas, or does it have to be under a lit area? What is a cat generally like for their litter box? Is that too open of a question?
Well, yes and no. I mean, in general, you want to put the litter box someplace that is going to be convenient for the cat. And if you've got a young cat who might not mind going down into the basement, that would be okay. But for an older cat, you know, that might be a problem. And if you've got a big house with 3 stories or a lot of square footage, then you're going to want to put the litter box locate the boxes in different areas of the house so the cat doesn't have to travel too far. If all of a sudden he needs to pee and he's got to go down 2 flights of stairs and around a corner and behind a bunch of storage boxes, you know, to do it, that could be a problem. And you also, the other thing to look for with cats is that when they're in the box, they're very vulnerable. And so they should be protected, say, locate the box in a corner perhaps, so that behind them, somebody or something, another pet or a kid or whatever, can't startle them from behind, and then they can also see what's coming toward them. And that way they feel less vulnerable and more protected if somebody can't get around behind them when they're in the litter box.
So generally, a box that has a lid on it might be a better solution, at least to start with.
It depends. You know, years ago we had 2 cats, and one was an older 3-legged cat, a little bit frail, and then we had this big orange tabby younger male, and he was very friendly, but he just wanted to kind of play and harass Tipper, our other cat. And we had her box in the shower stall that we weren't using, and we had a cover on it. And we noticed that not too long after we got Buffett, the young male, Tipper started, or somebody anyway, started peeing on the carpet in front of the toilet, the throw rug. And I actually watched this happen one day. Tipper was in the box, in the covered box, came out of the box, and there Buffett was to startle her and jump on her to play with her. We took the cover off so that she could see whether Buffett was waiting for her or not, and the problem disappeared.
How about that? So
yeah,
it's not always it's not a hard and dry rule. It's
not
fluid.
Yeah, it's really meeting the cat's individual preferences.
Okay, well that's really good to know. What about housebreaking a pet? Is there any way to speed that process up? We have a lot of our clients have puppies or kittens, and especially with puppies, would like to speed that up so that we're not out there cleaning their carpets all the time.
Well, yeah, there's several principles about house training, and we actually prefer to call it house training, especially when you're talking about puppies, because you're really not breaking any habits. The focus should be to train them what you want them to do, because they don't really come with bad habits, or they just come with not knowing the rules. So it's the owner's job to train them, and so that's why we talk about house training. Okay. And really, there's about three main things that people need to think about. The first one is to structure and manage the puppy's environment so that they don't allow mistakes to happen, because when they allow mistakes or soiling to happen, then that's what causes the dog to develop the habit of preferring the dining room or the bedroom or whatever over the outside. So they've got this constant supervision, eyes on, look at me, eyes on the puppy the whole time. And if they can't keep eyes on the puppy, then they should confine it in a small area or a crate for a reasonable time frame. Then the next thing is to take the puppy out on a consistent schedule and quite frequently, so that the puppy develops that habit of going outside to relieve himself. So the more that he repeats those behaviors, then they become the habit that the owner wants and not the habit of going inside. And then thirdly, to start a communication system between the owner and the puppy, so that the puppy knows what behaviors to display to let the owner know he needs to go outside. That's the third principle. And then the last one is to keep the puppy on a really regular feeding schedule as well as a go outside schedule.
Okay. We have, I don't know if this would qualify as like feeling in their space. It's not housebreaking, but like we'll clean an area rug like you just mentioned in your bathroom.
Okay.
And then we'll roll it up, take it out of the house, and the cat stops urinating there. They'll take the rug and put it, sometimes still rolled up, and sometimes a dog too, rolled up and put it into a whole different room, and the dog or cat will go right over to that and hit it, even though it's still rolled up. We've seen that several times over the years. What's up with that?
Well, that's a really good example of this is not a location preference, because if it's a location preference, he'd just go back to where the rug used to be. So that's a good indication that there's something about that surface and something about the texture of it that the pet really likes. And I don't know if there's still some slight odor cues there that the pet is keen on. The dog's and cat's sense of smell is so acute that it's really difficult, I think, to get rid of every single molecule of scent that they might be responding to. But it can also very likely be the texture of that particular throw rug as well.
Okay. All right. What about breaking them or training them not to chew pens and shoes, especially dogs, of course? Is there any tricks to make them stop chewing pens and stuff? We see pens once in a while.
You see pens?
Yeah, pens. Pens seem to be a big one. And of course, pens and carpet don't get along. So a shoe, they can always buy new shoes, but carpet, no. You got a big blue spot right in the middle of the living room, not a good thing.
Yeah. And you might be seeing a different segment of chew problems than we do, because I would say pens are not high on the list of items that we get called about. It's more like the expensive items, the shoes or whatever. But clearly in your business, I could see why pens would warrant a call to you. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing those from primarily younger dogs?
They're in the chewing phase. They're just, they're surrounded by all these chew toys, and then yet they find a pen somewhere, bring it back to the rug and chew it all up.
And chew on it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a couple things there, especially if you're talking about young animals. Young animals especially like novelty. And so the chew toys that are down there all the time, that's old hat, that's boring. So let's go sniff out something that I haven't tried before, like a pen. And the pen also probably has a strong scent of the owner, which can also be another attractant. They're also, most of the plastic pens are kind of flexible and they feel kind of good, when a puppy is teething. Right. So what I would do there is First off, they just have to puppy-proof the house. You know, when you're in that puppy stage, that's what you sign on for, is not letting some of those things be quite so accessible. You know, it's just like a kid or a baby. You've got to put the baby gates up. You've got to put the latches on your cabinets. You just have to do that. So that's one thing. Second thing is there's so many food-related toys now on the market. So for puppies, rather than just put their food in their bowls, put it in the puzzle toys. So the puppy has to work to move the toy around to dispense the food. That'll keep the chewing going longer. Oh. And then to also look at getting some of the toys that are specifically designed for teething, where you can put them in the fridge. The Kong toys, for example, you can stuff those and freeze them, and those feel really good, you know, on those gums and on the teeth, especially when the puppies are teething. So try to provide chew toys that, again, they're novel because you're rotating them all the time. It's not the same ones. Use a lot of the food stuff toys. Puppy-proof the house, and then also use the ones that are specifically designed for teething that are going to feel real good on those gums.
What about, this has nothing to do with our business, but I know that my neighbors have a dog that barks its head off. And they say, I've tried everything, I don't know what to do. So for my personal well-being, how do I fix their barking dog? Or can I?
Well, when it's a neighbor's dog, that's a real problem. You know, you can refer them to a behaviorist or a trainer so that they can get help. If it's happening when they're leaving the dog alone, then that could definitely be a sign of separation anxiety. So that would require some professional help. If it's just one of those dogs that, even though he has a good life, he's not left outside too often, you know, he comes from an enriched environment, but he just likes to bark at the leaves falling and every little sound he hears, that kind of thing, that you can get these devices that they look like birdhouses, little birdhouses, and you can hang them in a tree, and they have a microphone in them. And when the microphone senses the dog's bark, then it emits an ultrasonic sound that is quite loud and unpleasant. We can't hear it, but it's very startling for the dog. Oh. And you have to be careful, obviously, that if you have a dog, you don't want your dog outside when the neighbor's dog is barking. So you have to be careful as well that the barking really isn't fear motivated, and that the dog just isn't being ignored and neglected and left outside for too long. But if it's just a dog who just tends to have a low threshold for barking, and the owner isn't very responsible about responding to that, then you could try one of those ultrasonic birdhouse looking gizmos.
Okay, thanks. That's definitely going to be on my list. My friend has a Doberman Pinscher / English Lab, I think. It's a retriever mostly, but it looks like a Doberman Pinscher. And in the house, when this dog sees birds fly by, they got these big picture windows. The dog will try to chase it, and it'll just run, and it's an older dog. It's like 5 or 6 years old. Is there anything they can do to break or train their dog not to do that? Because it's kind of startling.
Well, a couple things. First off, it sounds like the dog needs, I don't want to say a job, but he needs some opportunities to display those behaviors in an acceptable way. You know, we have a Irish setter, like I told you, and she lives to point birds on walks. And so he needs some outlet for those natural tendencies. That's the first thing. Second thing is there are those panels that you can buy like at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's that you can put on the windows where you can still see into them, but you can't see out as well. So that would block the dog's vision, or they could simply close the drapes for a while, or if they could use a baby gate or something maybe to keep the dog out of that room for certain periods of time when they know that he's likely to engage in those behaviors. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach.
Airplanes too, if that helps. It's
when the airplanes are going over?
Yeah. Airplanes and birds, it's the two things it does not like. It's trying to retrieve things in the sky.
Well, I don't know what to tell you about the airplanes. You'd almost have to engage in some real intense counter conditioning where instead of wanting to go after the airplanes, if he sees the airplane, then he does something else that causes the owner to reward that behavior.
Okay.
But that would be a really big challenge, because it sounds like that is a really highly motivated behavior that he's doing.
Oh, she is. She's locked into those planes. Planes and,
Yeah.
and birds. Those are, yeah, it's crazy. Okay, what's the number one problem you see with owners, pet owners, stifling progress of their pets in training?
Well, I think that's a good question. Sometimes it's just, I don't want to say an unwillingness, but just an inability to follow through with some of the training recommendations. You know, people live busy lives, but when you have a problem with a pet, you've really got to put some time in to dealing with it. So that would be one thing. Second thing, we often see too, where people have acquired animals that probably really aren't the best match for their family. You know, like a Doberman living in a studio apartment, you know, that sort of thing. So that can be a problem. And I also think sometimes it's human nature for people to think about, how can I get Fido to stop doing whatever? And we want to get them thinking, how can I get him to do what I want him to do so I can reinforce him for it? So sometimes just changing that mindset of, I've got to get the good behavior I want and reinforce it, rather than I've got to focus on finding ways to stop him from doing something. People forget the finding ways to reward good stuff.
Any tips or hints that you can share with our viewers here today about pet behavior training, or even people?
Well, if you're talking about dogs, I would say don't buy into the alpha dog dominant, I have to, you know, be my pet's pack leader kind of stuff. That is really so unscientific and so disconnected from what we know about the behavior of dogs that it is just extremely counterproductive. Doesn't help the pet, doesn't help the person. Pet behavior or dog behavior isn't about being alpha. So they need to let go of that stuff. That would probably be the biggest thing.
Yeah, we once had a husky, and we got thrown out of pet obedience school because our Siberian husky would not, and that's a personal, like I think in my questions I said, what about the alpha dog? And they said they told me it was alpha. There's just no way to train this dog. I don't know if they were just trying to get rid of me or...
No, what they were really saying is they didn't know how to tell you how to train your dog.
Oh, okay.
That's what they were saying.
I ended up training her just fine at home, but
see,
they didn't want her there, so...
Yeah, so it wasn't about you and your dog, yeah. It was about they didn't have enough tools in their toolbox.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah.
How do people get in touch with you?
Two best ways, via email at info@animalbehaviораssociates.com, or our office phone is 303-932-9095.
Okay. Do you just work in Colorado, or do you consult over the phone, or how do you work?
We do in-home, some in-home visits in Colorado and Denver. We're actually snowbirds now. We split our time between Sun City, Arizona and Denver. So we do some in-homes in both those locations. And we also do a lot of, what we're doing now. We do some Skype. We do some phone consults. For many types of problems, we can work remotely that way quite effectively. So we really have clients that we work with all over the country and sometimes internationally as well.
Okay, so when I run into a client that has a problem pet, or maybe it's a problem with them, I'll just give them your phone number.
Absolutely, especially for house training problems. Those are easily dealt with remotely.
Okay, excellent. Have you, on your website, I think I saw some materials. Have you written papers or books? There's some books for sale on your site, so I was just wondering.
There are. Probably the one most geared to pet owners is the one called 12 Terrible Dog Training Mistakes Owners Make That Ruin Their Pet's Behavior and How to Avoid Them. Okay. So we have a website called terribledogtrainingmistakes.com, and it's also available through Amazon.
Excellent. Great. Okay, is there anything else we need to discuss about pets and their owners?
I don't think so. want to thank you for doing this little discussion. And boy, we often tell people you need to get your carpets cleaned, as part of the whole behavior modification process.
Sure.
So it's a joint effort there.
It is, yeah. We'll take care of the after effects, and you take care of the effects so it doesn't do it again.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne.
Nice to talk to you, Scott.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.